Russia, Vladimir Putin, Russia, hates Russia, Putin, Russia's Russia, Moscow, Russian, pro-Russian, the Russians, Moscow, Russia, Putin, Russia against us, Russians, Russia against the U.S. The Russian government scheme.
We're back. All right. I don't know if Felix can hear me or not on the other side. There's some issues with the lights. Okay. Can you guys increase his volume a little bit too? I can't really hear him that well in my IFB. God, I hate IFBs. Anyway, I'm your host, Hasan Piker. Joining me is Felix Biederman. Right now, we're going to talk about the Russiagate conspiracy. Felix, this is not like the Twitch streams that you and I have done in the past. You can't curse. I'm just letting you know ahead of time.
Dan told me I'm being a good boy today.
All right, I can hear him now perfectly. All right, thank God. All right, good stuff. So I'm just gonna also briefly outline some of the things that I wanna talk about in regards to Russiagate. Russiagate has basically become the liberal gluten or the liberal QAnon at a certain point where every single thing was directly tied back to Russian interference or Russia. I think it was a way for everyone to kind of feel better about America and to maintain this identity that America was truly an incredible nation with no faults of its own, and that the only reason why we have a sociopathic, demented man baby such as Donald Trump as president is because of foreign interference and not because the DNC, for example, failed completely and spectacularly, and the Hillary campaign failed on top of that as well, and that the Democratic Party has completely given up on trying to entertain blue collar votes and openly has admitted it, as Chuck Schumer did in 2016. So really quickly, I want to talk about the way that the media has also covered Russiagate and how the media has used this. Multiple media outlets, including CNN, Slate, Vox, and the New York Times, have produced articles linking Black Lives Matter to the Kremlin, insinuating that the outrage over racist police brutality is another Russian psyop. Others claimed that Russia funded the riots in Ferguson and that Russian trolls promoted the Standing Rock environmental protests. So the media elites are also relatively out of touch, and that's precisely why they have this perspective. Now, I'm not saying that every single person believes that like every single movement is directly related to Russia, but it is definitely a scapegoat that we have used to cover up for all of our personal failures within the Democratic Party and also our personal failures in regards to dealing with systemic inequalities, especially when considering the fact that, you know, we're using a foreign adversary with the GDP that is smaller than Texas, that is presenting this grave threat by buying ads and hacking our ballot reading software instead of addressing the fundamental problems like systemic racism that Russia was able to take advantage of and exploit America, as I've mentioned in the previous segment, as a powder keg. And if you don't care about addressing these issues from the point of view of empathy, the least you can do is care about solving systemic inequalities, as they clearly present a national security threat, since they're a massive opening for Russia and China and any other foreign adversaries to exploit. All right, Felix, so let's hear your thoughts on this. I know you hate this issue. I know you probably didn't want to talk about it, but thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
It's not every day that I get to have a New York Times bestseller on the show, so I'm very excited that you came on. But what do you think about Russiagate?
I mean, no one really cares about it anymore. It's like the vibe I get. I mean, if you like only spent your time like on Twitter, you would think it's still a going concern. But even then, like the fever's died down. I think like it died in the minds of a lot of people, even a lot of the diehards on Twitter, when the culmination of it was dragging this senile man, Robert Mueller, in front of Congress every few months to ask, hey, can you arrest the president? And each time him going, no, because he sort of said that towards the middle of the investigation, and then everyone getting mad at him. And, you know, do I think there was a lot of stuff of substance in the Mueller report? Yeah, absolutely. But like the fact is the limits of this investigation, the limits of Robert Mueller himself, the limits of what they can actually do, just sort of hyping this up is like there's going to be this huge smoking gun of Trump talking directly to Putin instead of what this thing actually was, which is like a bunch of scummy, amoral people being scummy and amoral in every direction, something we kind of already knew. It died in the minds of most people a while ago. I mean, it's still like, the thing is, people point to polls about it. It still polls well to some extent because, I mean, the image of this administration and the people around it is scummy and corrupt corrupt. But this thing lost a lot of purchase as like an election moving issue when it became clear it was more about like feeling normal again than anything else.
Yeah, so I want to talk about the details really quickly because you are correct. There are obviously some serious problems that were highlighted in the Mueller report in regards to election meddling and how easily compromised our election security is. But unfortunately, aside from like Paul Manafort, who went to jail for just being too hot and enjoying the finer things in life, like, I don't know, iguana skinned suits and whatever. The only other person that went to jail was Reality Winner after a top secret NSA report detailed Russian hacking efforts days before the 2016 election. Reality Winner famously got 63 months in prison. At the issue in the Winner's case was a document she leaked to a news outlet, The Intercept, of course, which published an article on June 5th, 2017 about a 5-page National Security Agency report that detailed how alleged Russian hackers targeted election vendors with phishing attacks in an attempt to access voter rolls in several states. So she got 63 months in prison, and I'm shocked that like most Democrats have not screamed about this, considering how they are the real patriots and the Republicans are actually selling America to foreign adversaries. And there is some truth to that.
They don't like whistleblowers no matter what.
Yeah.
They've made that quite clear.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. Now, there is obviously the serious threat that the Reality Winner exposed and also the Mueller report showed, which was that Russia did hack state databases and voting machine companies. I have a video here really quickly to show you exactly how easy it is to hack one of these machines. So let's take a look at this video right now.
All they have to do, this bad actor, would be to open up this machine by pressing this button right here. When it's off, removing the card reader, removing this, you don't need any tools to do this. Unplugging this, again, you don't need any tools to do this. Turning it on, all you have to do is pick this lock here with a ballpoint pen. Open this up. Press the red button. So it's loading what they call a secure voting terminal right now. And here we're gonna see a couple of error messages, and all you have to do to bypass those error messages is just click cancel and OK. And now I have full admin access under 2 minutes.
And yet just hours after Senate Republicans blocked a vote on a bill to make elections less vulnerable to cyber attacks, the Senate Intelligence Committee released a 67-page report concluding that leading up to the 2016 election, Russians hacked voting machines and registration rolls in all 50 states, and they are likely still doing so. We need voting machines with paper ballot backups, but the Senate report notes that 19 states do not conduct complete post-election audits to compare these ballots to the electronic results. 5 of them do not audit at all. Paper backups mean little if nobody looks at them. Mitch McConnell is personally blocking bills, not allowing House-passed election security and voting reforms bills to be brought up. And Republicans have also blocked efforts by Senate Democrats to push through other election security bills by unanimous consent, including one that would require backup paper ballots and provide election security grants to states, and another that would require campaigns to report offers of illegal foreign assistance to the FBI. This is where you come in, Felix. We're talking about illegal foreign assistance. I know you're a big fan of the Israeli and Saudi regimes in the Middle East.
Best.
Yeah, speaking of foreign interference, of course, I don't know why we always talk about Russian interference or potential Chinese foreign interference, and yet we rarely ever talk about the prevailing influence that MBS has. Being a big round boy, being the big round boy he is, coming to America, getting the red carpet treatment from our press. And now he has a carte blanche approach to being able to chop up even legal permanent residents such as Jamal Khashoggi. Yeah, what do you think about all this? I mean, we got Israel like literally writing anti-BDS legislation, which is supposed to be like the most important constitutional right that we have, is just freedom of speech, right? You have Donald Trump openly going mask off, admitting that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia can chop up legal permanent resident American journalists, considering that they're buying $10 billion of weapons that then end up, I don't know, turning an entire school bus full of children into glass. Our weapons are doing that in Yemen. So we rarely ever talk about that sort of influence. I don't know why. And there are a number of other issues on top of that in regards to election security. Some of them I just mentioned, that Mitch McConnell and the Republican Party is not really too fond of. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that's the case? Do you have an opinion on this?
Why do I think that we don't talk about like other election interference and security breaches as much? Well, I remember, if you know my history as a person, when I was like 14, I was very much computer liberal, like a lot of kids my age at the time. I would argue with the like 2 or 3 Bush Republicans on my gaming forum back in like 2003, 2004. And I remember when talking about like Diebold voting machines made you a crank. And even among like regular Democrats at the time, it kind of made you a crank, which was insane to me. They were, then and now, all voting machines, like insanely easy to tamper with. Insanely. Like as that video shows. And it was one of those cases of having like this massive, if you were me in 2004 and you were way more into these ideas of like civic fidelity, you thought that we were so close to fully having that if it just wasn't for Bush, that you would be totally against these things. Because what is the reasoning for having them? It's like most government contracts like that, where it's like someone's idiot nephew made a type of bad computer and the government has to buy it now. There's really, with a government with like virtually unlimited resources, why wouldn't you just pay people to count the ballots? Obviously, there's human error and human corruption, but it's not as open for malfeasance as these things obviously are. There are, to people's credit, there are a lot of like Russiagate libs who talk about how bad voting machines are, and I agree with them. But it's another thing. It's like tax software. You're not going to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should make that more clear. You're not going to. The thing that happens every year where some enterprising young lefty congressperson tries to make it so that the IRS will allow you to do your taxes for free with government software, which like why wouldn't that exist? And of course, TurboTax doesn't want it to happen. This is a similar type of deal. It's one of those very boring but very dull, sinister things that, allows everything to keep functioning very poorly. As far as the other influence goes, the Mueller report did talk about a lot of like scummy Israeli nationals who I guess, tried to pay Donald Trump in capri pants and bad ecstasy, as is, the custom in that country. Don't worry, I can say that. But I think that like the cultural focal point remained Russia, because Russia seems like the most other, to our country, right?
And there's a long history of it with the Red Scare and all that. So it's like, I love that. I mean, they even still call Mitch McConnell Moscow Mitch. There's ads that are being taken out, like linking the GOP back to the USSR all around the country, as though this is like an effective strategy of dealing with the Republican Party, which is kind of funny. It kind of is, because apparently Mitch McConnell, who is unshakable in other ways, is genuinely pissed off about the Moscow Mitch link, from what I understand.
Well, yeah, because he's 100,000 years old, and he doesn't care about like being called like a slime ball with no beliefs or anything, but like because he's 100 million years old and remembers the Cold War, this is like I guess the worst thing you can call him. So I mean, it's corny as wow. I'm realizing how limited my vocabulary is with these YouTube TOS. It's really corny. But if it makes his day slightly worse, it's fine. I mean, at the end of the day, he's still going to be doing all the things he does, still be exactly as evil forever. Nothing really changes. But hey, if it makes his day worse, that's nice. But I think like a lot of the reaction to Trump in general and like a lot of the reaction to this stuff is just like, I've talked about it before. You've talked about it. It's a desire to feel normal again. And like out of all those countries that are like named in their Mueller report, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Israel, whatever, none of them hit that little button in your mind of not normal, of making us not feel normal. I think the cultural image of Russia is just that like half of all cars are driven by bears. The most common job is like alcoholic who dies.
I'm quite disgusted that you are engaging in Russophobia on this day, a day after Italophobia ran rampant through our news cycle with Cuomo being attacked with hate speech. Russia has a robust economy of dashcam video footage. So they are the #1 supplier of live stream fails and and dash cam footage. A couple things that I wanted to get to really quickly, because you made a really good point. You said that this is like for everyone to believe that this is like a sinister foreign agent that's changing the American political landscape single-handedly, and if we were to defeat that foreign adversary, then we could go back to normalcy and this would be great. And it's basically like the liberal boomer QAnon conspiracy where like everything I hate is Russiagate, everything I hate is Russia. That is in stark contrast, of course, with the fact that the Republican Party is actively and deliberately engaging with voter suppression at every step of the way, like in Georgia, where the Secretary of State gave himself a narrow victory over Stacey Abrams, or Ron DeSantis, who narrowly defeated Andrew Gillum in the gubernatorial race in Florida, and is now trying to scale back on the recent felon voting restoration that was voted on, which is a very successful ballot measure on that same exact gubernatorial race in Florida, trying to reinstitute a poll tax essentially to felons to stop them from voting again. So this is the kind of like awful stuff that happens all the time. Election fraud in North Carolina, just some examples that I can think of. Voter ID laws that are being struck down by the Supreme Court because these Republicans are literally like emailing each other saying, we really don't want black people to vote. Like that's the only way you can, way you can catch these people, and they still end up failing.
Right, that cute, cuddly, never Trump Republican that we all hold up as an icon of decency now, Jeb Bush, if you remember what he did in Florida in 2000. None of this is new. They've always done this. Every guy who's like never going to run for office again, so he gets out there and says, Donald Trump, cool it with the racism. The guy whose career is essentially over, so he can make $10 million for the rest of his year giving PowerPoints to, Jewel or whatever. They all had a hand in this. They all kind of made their career in this like Jeb did. And yeah, none of it's a new thing. And again, I want to be fair to the normal libs. Like they talk about this a lot, but it's something that I wish an Obama DOJ had taken on more, right?
You said the Obama DOJ you wish would take this on a little bit more. Yeah, that would have been incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the end of all, the thing I've always thought about Russiagate and all this is to some extent, say it's like 100% true and they just destroyed us. You kind of have to say game at that point, right?
Yeah.
We're the biggest, baddest empire ever, yet we have the most principles ever. We have the best constitution ever. And the Radio Shack took us out.
Yeah, Radio Shack took us out and we're not doing anything about it. Which is quite shocking. Something that I've never been able to understand is that the same people that argue that Trump is a Putin puppet are also resisting calls for Trump's impeachment. If Trump is a Putin agent, which I don't believe he is, and he's eroding our norms, checks and balances, which I do believe he is, then why aren't Democrats doing anything about it?
Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.